Came from the mud, there's dirt on my hands. Strong like a tree, there's roots where I stand. Oh, I've been running from the law. Hope they won't shoot me down soon.
So tapering for an event is always a key one, and it's always, especially like triathletes, they almost like freeze up. They almost get scared of like tapering into an event. And generally, for a lot of athletes, then a taper is going to be individual for what like you need. Especially, I think the hardest one is like looking at like an Ironman effort, because if you look at like the overall volume that athlete's probably going to have trained, even for like an age group that's just almost like wanting to get through, they're probably going to have done like anywhere between 10 to 15 hours training realistically. You know, if we look at like professionals, then it's probably going to be, I don't know, 20 to 30 hours potentially. And leading into like an Ironman race, then there's going to be a lot of load that you've probably experienced. And generally, what I always do for most athletes, it's almost like 10 days out, you almost like cut the training into half. And there's a real scientific way of doing this. Like I love using like the metrics in like Training Peaks, and obviously then the feedback of like the athlete. So if you look at the load that athlete is, then week to week, they've probably been ramping up training. In terms of critical training load, probably be around like, I'd say like 2 to 4 points a week, where what we want to do with their training is probably like half that. And then what we're trying to do is, if we look at form, we're trying to make them fresh. And I think where a lot of athletes, you know, like they go wrong, they get really scared like 10 days out and going, right, okay, well I was doing like 4 hours, 6 hours at a weekend, you know, like for their long bike, and now we're going to say, well, realistically you need to do like 3 hours. And then they might look at the run and go, well, I've been doing 2.5 hours running, and now you're going to do like 90 minutes. But you've got to try and bring this freshness in, else ultimately you never reach like your full potential. It is, you've almost like got to experiment with this quite a lot of into like specific races, just finding out like what works for you realistically. But I'm a big believer in like, if you're doing 20 hours training, then you're probably going to do like 10 to 12. If you're doing 15 hours, then it's probably going to be like 7 to 8. And I think that's a good way of looking at the training. And then, well, what do I incorporate within that training then? Obviously, volume's going to drop, but we just probably want to keep some intensity in, you know, in the workout. So I always do like 2-3 VO2 max efforts in, say if it's like a time trial or a triathlon, in like the position. You know, this is specific talking about like the bike, and imagine, you know, like it's like for running or swimming, it's just incorporating some form of acceleration or VO2 max. So you just switch everything on, and generally I would always incorporate, like the last day I would do that is probably like 3 days out, and then I might on the day, you know, leading into the race, just a few accelerations to kind of, you know, like just spark everything, because you don't want to get too lazy. Just shock the body a little bit, but not too much. But if you are using like metrics like Training Peaks, then it's really worth looking at kind of what's worked in the past in terms of like the amount of training volume that, you know, like you can see that you've done well with, and then the freshness that you kind of need within, like there'll be a winning formula that's, you know, that will give you that winning race result, to speak. Most people are going to feel like they've not done enough, you know, like when we talk about like the taper week, they're going to, but you should start to feel fresh, like you're sleeping a little bit more. You might feel a bit lethargic or nervous, but that's a good thing, you know. It's not a bad thing to have like these nerves, thinking that you've not done enough. Like that's how you generally want to be feeling. But providing you include some acceleration or VO2 max effort, then you'll switch everything on come race day. And I would definitely say that if you've been training this for like a year, 6 months, the hardest part is actually freshening up properly. Too many people go into races, we see it all the time, even at world class level, where these athletes just get it, everybody panics. Learn from the mistakes that you've had in the past, and yeah, don't bring them again.